Apple is a retail phenomenon, but are its workers underpaid? I'm Peter Latman reporting for Business Day Live. Later in the show, we've got an interview with the head of Pepsi's China operations. But first, I'm joined by David Siegel, who wrote our latest piece in the iEconomy series. Hi, David.
How are you?
Good. Great story yesterday, and
Thank you.
your basic premise is this. So Apple has 43,000 employees. 30,000 of those employees in the United States are employed by these Apple stores, which have really been a retailing phenomenon.
Right.
Yet what you found and seem to suggest is that their workers are really not getting their fair share of what's been a fabulously successful business enterprise.
So when you look at the numbers, the Apple stores are the most profitable enterprises per square foot of any chain of US retailers. They are, in fact, twice as profitable as the number 2 retailer per square foot, which is Tiffany.
Right.
In terms of their pay, they're kind of middle to low, a little bit better than the Gap, not quite as good as Lululemon, and they do give excellent benefits, as many of these other companies do, but what they don't do is give commissions. So what you have at Apple is something, what I think is unique in the annals of retail, which is people who are selling about $3 million worth of product at the highest end of performance, who are earning $11.59 an hour.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned commissions, and your article got a tremendous reaction online. I looked just before coming on. There were 1,300 comments and counting, which is extraordinary. And one strain of comments suggested that, well, of course these workers don't work on commission because people are lining up around the corner to buy these iPhones and these iPads. These products sell themselves. So of course they don't need to work on commission, and that makes sense. How would you respond to that?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, many of them, there certainly is a huge instant appeal, and there are many people that walk in and just say, I want the iPad and I know which one. But it is also the case that there are people at Apple who are much better at selling than other people. So there are people that sell $3 million worth of stuff, and there's people that sell $750,000 worth of stuff. And the idea of not rewarding, outlining performance or in any way cutting those excellent salespeople into profits is highly unusual. The other thing is, I think more broadly, there's this larger question of what is a company for? And for a long time, recently, and relatively recently, the answer has been to maximize profits for the people that run the company and for shareholders, and that's it. But that's a relatively new idea, and for previously, say from the 50s to the 70s, there was another idea, which was another way to judge this company or a company is how it improves the well-being and welfare of its employees.
Right. So let me say another line of comments that developed along in the comment section of your story was that, well, maybe the answer is that these employees should unionize, a topic that you address in your story. Is that the answer?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, the decline of unions, you can chart the decline of hourly wages, or it's leveling off in relative terms with the decline of unions. There's the strong correlation. The other thing that's fascinating is that there has been attempts at Apple to unionize. In Germany, there is one unionized Apple store, and they have actually had some success in getting better conditions and higher wages. In the United States, there's a guy who I quote in my story who has tried to create a union, and the more I asked him about it and tried to figure out how big his union was, it became clearer and clearer that his union was, as far as I could tell, him. Which is to say that one of the things I'm going into in this story is looking at the culture of Apple and how it has this kind of one-for-all, highly original, highly evolved culture that says we're all in this for Apple. There is a teamwork ethos there that's very hard to crack.
Now the company, interestingly, a couple of weeks before this story came out, maybe it was the week before, started telling some of its best employees that they were getting raises.
Right.
You seem to not have been able to penetrate whether the company did this as a result of your reporting. But what happened there?
I mean, we can only describe the events as they unfolded in real time, and they are that I started asking Apple about the wages of its employees about 4 months ago as I started reporting the story, and as the publication date approached, about 4 days before we published, I put it up on the web on Saturday, they began giving substantial raises to employees. The largest raise I actually heard about last night from an Apple employee who wrote to me who said that he got a 50% raise. He went from 1140 to 1760 or something. I might be getting numbers a little bit wrong. But it was a substantial raise. What is behind those raises? You know, Apple is absolutely tight and extremely mute.
We'll see if some
things.
boxes of fruit show up at your desk later as thank yous from the various employees, possibly.
Yes, possibly.
One final question, which is, you know, reading your story, it made me think, well, maybe this isn't really a story about Apple. This is more broadly a story about the service economy and how manufacturing's declined in the United States. And this is really about service workers, and perhaps some of the problems that you identify in your story is more of a, you know, a structural issue in the American economy. How would you respond to that?
I think that's totally right, and we tried to actually frame this as Apple as an exemplar rather than simply, you know, an individual case that is unlike any other. So I think that's absolutely true, and as I said in the story, any recovery with legs for this economy is going to be driven by the service sector. So there needs to be some changes similar to the one that we might have seen last week with Apple and those raises in order to jumpstart the economy, I think.
Well, great stuff, David. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
China has become central to the economy as the world's electronics workshop, but China is also becoming an important market for consumer goods. Earlier, Louise Story spoke to the head of Pepsi's China operations, who said that the country could soon surpass the U.S. in a surprising way.
Pepsi's CEO has said that China is on track to surpass the United States as the largest beverage country.
That's right. So our best guess is by 2015, China will pass the United States. The remarkable thing about that, though, is that the per capita consumption remains extremely low. The average consumer only has a beverage once every day and a half.
And what is it in the United States?
2 a day.
2 a day. So, you know, China will surpass the United States in terms of volume, but do you all charge as much for your beverages over there? Will you make as much profit?
Where you can find a Pepsi-Cola pretty much everywhere in China. You know, now you're starting to see our Lipton teas, our Gatorades on the East Coast, even our Tropicana juices. We're adding value to those products, being able to charge a slight premium. And so you're seeing two trends. You're seeing premiumization in the coastal cities, and then you're seeing the middle class come up and entering the consuming class in the rest of China. And that's the magic. I mean, it's truly the magic. The China middle class will be the world's next baby boom generation.
And when do you think that'll happen by?
Well, it's happening now. If you look at the growth of retail sales has been growing at about a 15% clip for the last couple of years. The potential, the upside potential is still fantastic.
Now, you know, here in the U.S. and even some in Europe, there are a lot of concerns about sodas and the obesity problem, and there's regulatory pressures. Do you see any signs of that in China?
Yeah, the biggest issue in China is food safety. You can't pick up a newspaper today without reading about some scandal in China. So if you ask consumers in China today to rank their concerns, it's not about unemployment, it's not about job security, it's food safety.
So does Pepsi's growth in China help Americans in any way, and how?
Well, you know, we're in China for China, so 100% of everything we make in China is sold to Chinese. There's no export.
And you don't import anything made elsewhere to China? You make it all there?
For the most part, everything is made in China for China. And that's our operating model around the globe. Food and beverage is inherently local. This isn't something, you know, if you look at a bag of potato chips, it's not terribly efficient to ship that around the world. I think that's the magic of not just PepsiCo, but our brands, because our brands work in these countries. It's easy to replicate a cola, a potato chip, or Quaker Oats. They're widely accepted in all these countries. So I think the spill-on benefit is the growth of emerging markets for PepsiCo is helping to fuel reinvestments back home.
That's all for today. Please follow us at nytimes.com for a continuing coverage of these and other stories. I'm Peter Latman, reporting for Business Day Live. Thanks for watching.